She could have given birth anywhere, but chose people. She could have chosen the forest, a cave, a rocky ledge, but she chose an old barn and people who never asked to be chosen. It was just after dawn when Mary heard its faint breath increase behind the wooden wall of the barnet. First she thought it was a bird, maybe a rabbit, caught in something, but Tom heard it too. They stepped into cold, still air of the barn, hearts heavy with quiet concern, and then, beneath a blanket of old hay, they saw it, 3 newborn Bobcat kittens, their eyes still closed there. Tiny bodies huddled against thick old, but that wasn't the most remarkable thing. She was there, the mother Nothodin, not running. She stood at a distance, silent, watching. She didn't bare her teeth, she didn't growl. She watched it as Mary knelt slowly, not touching, just breathing. Just being the Bobcat blinked on stage. She didn't flee into theatres. She didn't hide her young shoe-eyed. She watched as if she had been waiting for them. Why that question? Would stay with Mary for a long time. She hadn't come out of nowhere. Neighbors had seen her before. A bobcat moving like smoke along the tree line always. Alone a ways distant, she never approached thepisters, never came close to the house, just a flicker in the corner of the IA's shadow between the pines. But Mary remembered one day in particular. It was late autumn. The trees were thinning, themmering. Frost hadn't melted yet. Mary had walked to the edge of the property to check on a loose fence post. And there, barely 20 feet away, stood the Bobcat. Shedden bolt. She didn't growl. She just watched, amber eyes meeting Mary's across the cold air, not curious, not afraid, just aware. And then she turned and melted back into the trees, her movement silent as snowfall. Mary thought of her nose standing so still in the barn, her gaze calm, unwavering. Had she grown up Nerthus land, watching, listening, or had Shechem here? Fleeing something, hunger, fire, predators, people, well, never know, but one thing felt clear. To Mary, as clear as the frostbitten dawn light, she hadn't come by accident. Tom believed it too. She chose us, he said quietly. She didn't just show up, she decided. And there was more. Mary and Tom weren't alone on the ranch there. Australian shepherd Maple had recently given birth to 4 puppies, barely 10 weeks old, wiggling, tumble-gapping little. Bundles of warmth and joy. Maple watched over them with tireless devotion, cleaned them, corrected them, let them pile against her for sleep. Sometimes the Bobcat would appear north window while the pups were playing just outside the fence, silent, still watching. Maybe she had seen Mary weeks ago when she cradled a wounded raven in her arms, bandaging a broken wing before leasing it back into the sky. Maybe she had seen Maple roll onto her side to let the smallest pup nurse after the other. She had fallen asleep, maybe. She saw something. She understood a kind of softness, a kind of safety. There was something about these people and this dog that spoke to something. Buried deep in the wild mother's heart, a signal. She couldn't name, but she trusted it. She had her instincts, and something in them told her, here they'll be safe. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, Mary returned to the barn, carrying a small bowl of warm chicken broth. She placed it gently in the farkener, just beyond the straw. Ness, careful not to get too close. She didn't speak. She didn't reach out. She just set it down and stepped back. That night, Thebble was empty, licked clean. The next day she left. Another Tom followed her with an old wool blanket, folded it neat linear. The wall, they didn't expect anything in return, but still she came back. Every night the Bobcat would vanish into the forest during the day, quiet as mist, but always returned by Duskama times. Mary would catch her just by in the barn, sitting like a statue in snow-light eyes. Glinting gold and theat twilight. She didn't growl. Didn't run schwatched. She looked directly into Mary's. It's not with fear, but with some thing's recognition, trust. It was that instinct. Not just that it was a choice, and while the wild mother vanished into the trees each morning, someone else acutely stepped in. Maple, the shepherd, had been curious from the beginning, nose in the air, ear spricked toward the barn. But now, with Bobcat gone through most of the damn apple, it began to hover near the barn door, slang down nearby, calmly watching Anduin. The kittens began to stir and toddle toward the light. It was Maple Wastude, just a few feet away, tail still, head tilted. As soft at first, she kept their distance, but day by day she inched closer until she could see their tiny paws, their twitching ears. Their wide blinking eyes. She never barked, never pushed, just watched with the same quiet presence. The bobcat had once offered her meanwhile. On the back porch the puppies were, growing fast, bounding, tumbling, wrestling in the snow, but sometimes when light was just right, Mary would seat one of the bobcat kittens, peeking out from the barn, watching the puppies play, and once when the smallest pup wandered too, close to the open barn doors, he didn't bark or flinch. He sat down, and Andy, tiny wild kitten, stepped closer and sniffed. It was nothing more than amament, but it was the first threat of something bigger. The mother bobcat never showed aggression, not once, not toward Maple, not toward the puppies. She kept distance, always arriving silently. Late hours, always leaving before Thiessen climbed above the pines. She didn't hiss or growl when Maple approached Thebern. She didn't pace or guard thecatons when the puppies came near. She watched, not coldly, but not warmly, almost as if she were measuring something. There were moments when one-off the puppies would tumble too close, tuth barn door, or let out sudden yelp after tripping over a route. The bobcat would glance that way, ears twitching, body still, but she didn't react. She didn't move to protect or correct. She simply watched, as if she were evaluating, studying. And more than that, trusting. Note in the humans, but in Maple it was subtle, but Mary saw it. The wild mother wasn't just tolerating the dog's presence, she was allowing it. Days passed, the kittens grew stronger, their legs steadier, their curiosity sharper, and the bobcat began to stay away longer, slipping into the woods before dusk, sometimes not returning until deep into the night. She was hunting again, providing. But one afternoon something changed. Mary looked out the kitchen window and froze in. They erred among the rolling pile of fur antails that was Maple's litter. Was a fourth kitten, not a puppy, a bobcat. He moved awkwardly through the group, smaller than the others, his spots bright against the snow-dusted grass. He didn't play, not yet, just watched, and beside him Maple stood, alert, stiff at first, tail high, eyes locked. Then she exhaled. She didn't bark. She didn't nudge him away, she let him stay. And before long, a sickened kitten joined, then a third. They crept from the barn, one by one, sniffing trail left by the puppies, stepping gento. Their world, like it might be theirs, to the line between wild and domestical blurred that day, and none of them, not Mary, not Tom, not even Maple, tried to redraw it. By the end of the week, it was no longer unusual. Mary and Tom would sip their morning coffee and look out across the yard to see a sight that no one would believe unless they saw it with their own eyes. For puppies and 3 bobcat kittens curled up in Thiessen patch's sun, a soft-breathing heap of spotted fur, floppy ears, and twitching tails. They played together, slept together. A mess of squeaks, growls, and chirping sounds no one could quite tell apart anymore. What started as cautious proximity had turned into something deeper, a shared rhythm. They moved together. They waited for each other. They belonged to one another now. There was no offense between them, no clear line to draw. No one taught them how to be together. They simply chose it. In Maple watched it all. She kept a gentle eye from a few feet away, never too close, but Al was present. She corrected when needed, nudges sleepy or the overexcited, but shouldn't separate them. She let them bewintle. The moment came when she had toe step in. It was the most active of Thebobat cat kittens, the one Tom called Scoutwo, started it. They were playing, tumbling over each other in the tall grass near the porch, when Scout pounced in, the smallest puppy, knocking him over with a sharp shove. The pup yelped, rolled, want. Still, it wasn't aggression, not from Scout. It was excitement, wild, unfiltered, too big for his little body. It was show he played, how he showed emotion, viewed it, was too much. In an instant, Maple rose. Not barking, not growling, just moving. She stepped between them, with quiet certainty, her body firm, tail, low scowl, citated, stared at her, then back to Weir's, flattening just slightly. It could have ended there, a line drawn, a warning given, but Maple didn't stop. She turned, trotted to the porch, and returned with a worn, fraying rope. Toy 1. The puppy she had long since abandoned. She dropped it gently in front of Scout, and offering a gesture, not punishment, not excellent inclusion. The moment hung there quiet still. And then Scout took the rope, sat down, chewed. A few seconds later, Thepapy rolled to his feet and crawled over. Beside him together again, Mary whispered from the kitchen window, her hand over her heart. She doesn't dividend them, she brings them together. Several days passed, the days grew warmer. Desno began to melt, in patches revealing soft earth and muddy trails. The puppies and bobcat kittens played longer, wandered farther, their world expanding with each sunrise, and then one afternoon something felt wrong. Maple paced over and over, back and forth along the edge. Esh for the yard, her ears twitched, her nose pressed low to the ground, a low, anxious whine escaped her throat. One of Thepapy's was missing, the smallest one. Thequitist one gone, Mary called out, her voice tight with fear. Tom searched Thefield, the barn, the woodshed. Maple circled again and again, nose to the windpaws, muddy eyes wide. Panic crept in unjust. When it began to feel too quiet, too hopeless, a shadow moved at the edge off Treine. The bobcat, she stepped into view with something in her mouth, a shape-small limp. The puppy Mary gasped, but couldn't move. Maple froze. The bobcat walked forward. Slow, steady, her movements calm, deliberate. She reached the open space near the barn and gently set the puppy down in the grass. He was muddy, shaking, but alive. He had crawled under fence, slipped into a thicket hidden too deep for any of them to find, but Chet had found him. The wild mother, the one with no collar, no name, no reason to protect anyone's child but her own shell, looked at Maple, not for approval, not for thanks. Just for a moment, eye to eye. Anthon, she turned and disappeared back into the trees. Mary knelt beside Thepa, wrapping him in her arms. Her voice trembled as she whispered, the wild mother saved someone else's child. One morning, while checking the fence line deep in the woods, Tom heard voices, low-clipped, unfamiliar. He slowed his steps in, then he saw them, two men in orange vests, walking slowly through the trees, rifles slung over their shoulder shunters. They weren't from the town. Hewald remembered their faces, one of them telt by a patch of soft earth pointing to a distinct track in the mud, a rounded print pads. Claws, bobcat. Tom's chest tightened. He stayed hidden behind a tree, listening. Very fresh, one of the men said. Shiscot, a den close by, might be raising kits. The other nodded. Wouldn't be bad to report it too close to the pasture stone. Turned away before they could see him. Walked home slow, eyes scanning Theatres. Every branch suddenly cold. Her head didn't tell Mary right away, but she knew something was wrong. The moment Hess stepped through the door, and when Heffenly told her, she went still. If they'd find her, she whispered, they'll take her, Tom said quietly, or worse. That night they sat in silence by the window, watching the barn from the porch. Bobcat came as always, silent, graceful, unnoticed by the rest of Thur, but not by them, not anymore. Mary Shand curled around her mug. Her voice didn't tremble. If they try to take Hirsch, said they'll have to come through me first. Tom looked over at her. She trusted us. Mary added, she brought her children here. We don't get to forget that just Beck House, it's inconvenient. Both looked out toward the dark outline of the barn where the pups and kittens were curled together in sleep. She's part of this family now, Mary said, and I won't let anyone take Familia away. The wind began late in the evening, sharp, sudden, carrying the cold with it. By nightfall, the storm had taken hold. Snow blew sideways across the fields, piling in drifts against the barn doors. Trees groaned. The world outside vanished in white. Mary stayed up late, watching from the window, waiting, but the bobcat never came. By morning the storm had acid, leaving a thick, silent stillness in its wake, and still no sign of her. Tom searched the woods, his boots crunching through deep snow. Mary called soft life from the barn, hoping to see golden ice flicker in the shadows. Nothing. The day passed, then another. The bobcat had left before, but never for this long, never without a trace, and never without a trace, and never without a trek. On her young the kittens grew quiet, slourthy. They barely moved when Mary opened the barn door. Didn't cry, they didn't play, they simply waited. Thepapes, usually a flurry of motion, and noise whimpered by the hay pile. One off them nudged a bobcat kitten, gently thankled beside it, and Maple, who had long ago made the barn part of her round spart of her space, didn't hesitate. She walked in slow and calm and stepping straight into the nest. She settled down among them, wrapping her body around the small, chilled forms, not just her own but bobcat kittens too. She placed Hurchin gently atop the smallest one and stayed there that night. Tom stood in theater way, arms crossed, eyes fixed on Theburn. If she doesn't come back, he said softly, what are we supposed to do? Mary. Didn't answer. She didn't have anal. She could do was look out into trees and hope. On the fifth day, just before dawn, the rain came heavy. Cold or lantless, it soaked the earth's turning fields into rivers of mud, and mist thunder rolled low over. The hills and the sky hung dark with weight. Mariah panned the barn doors to check on the animals. Is her heart heavy, her coat already drenched, and there standing at the gate-was, her thin, drenched to the bone, matted fur clinging to sharp ribs, eyes sunken butt. Steady the bobcat, she didn't make a sound. She stepped through the mud without hesitation, slow but sure, her head low, shoulders tense. She crossed the threshold of the barn. The storm behind her, the warmth ahead, she didn't pause. As humans, she went straight to them. Tooth pile of sleeping bodies tucked into the straw, the bobcat kittens, the puppy send. Maple lying curled among them. Thrilled mother approached. Slowly Maple lifted her head, alert but calm. Shedn't move. The bobcat came close, Closino, for breath to touch fur, and stopped. She didn't growl. She didn't posture. She leaned forward and touched her nose gently to Maple's muzzle. A moment silent, unshakable. Not a warning. Not a warning. Fear, it was something else. Recognition, trust. Thanks, she looked once more at her kittens, at the puppy's bedside, then turned in a slow, circling, curled up just beside them, all pressed against the edge of the straw. She didn't need to reclaim them. She had never lost them. They were hers, and they were safe. Half a year passed. The yard no longer echoed with the wild, clumsy play-off 7 small bodies. The puppies had grown strong, lean, confident. All but one had found new homes, wagging their tails as they stepped into new beginnings. Only one stayed. His name was Finn, and Hewan. Alone, one of the bobcat kittens, the quietest, most watchful of the 3, still returned every evening. His name was Ash. He never fully left for Thephrus like the others. He chose to stay. He slept curled beside Maple on Thepperch. He ran with Finn through the grass, their bodies moving as one, two, shapes wild and domestic, playing a rhythm only they knew. They had grown up like brothers, different in every way except the ways that mattered. And the bobcat mother still came sometimes, just asked before quiet. Unseen unless you were looking for her. She didn't come for food or shelter. She came to watch, but not to check on her kittens. Not anymore. She watched the yard, the porch, the figures moving through the tall grass. In summertime she lingered longer then. Sheshold have her amber eyes soft with something. It's almost human, because Sho isn't looking at what she had left behind. She was looking at her. Families, sometimes nature chooses a path we'll never fully understand. Sometimes a wild mother chooses a human. And that means more than trust. It means family. If this story touched your heart, follow us here at Hope and for more true stories of connection, kindness, and thrilled bonds that bring us together.